I was taking over the coaching career of Deion Sanders, aka Coach Prime, and of course brought Shedeur Sanders with me to Colorado as we were looking to take over the Pac-12 as soon as I got there. But I will figure out early on that this wasn't Jackson State and the competition was a lot stiffer. It didn't help that our first game was an in-state rivalry against Colorado State, so I figured this one will be a little bit tougher. But Shedeur would quickly settle in and find his big-time receiver, Montana Lemonius, who brought in the catch but would miss the rest of the game after falling hard on his back. But Colorado State wasn't going to go down easily and would connect on this beautiful pass that would set them up for an easy touchdown. Colorado State scoring just before the half would kill our momentum, but I knew we had to make some adjustments at halftime, and I figured we would start running the ball. The ground game proved to be effective, and the defense would step up in the second half, and this game would end up in a blowout as Tyron Taylor would take an interception and take it back to the crib. We were 1-0 and ready to kill the Pac-12. But first we needed to take on Buffalo, and the defense picked up right where it left off, with its second touchdown in as many games. Since Travis Hunter didn't follow us to Colorado, I was concerned we wouldn't have enough weapons to compete, but Montana Lemonius would build a nice rapport with Shedeur, and what looked like an easy tune-up game would suddenly turn into a 10-10 dogfight with sneaky Buffalo. And I knew if we were going to have any chance of winning this game, we had to expand past the run game and start throwing the football. After this drop by Arias, I knew that I had to go right back to him to let him know I still believed in him. But the next series, Shedeur would make me shake my head with this terrible interception, and Buffalo would be right back in it. After that interception, I wasn't sure I could trust Shedeur, so I called this trick play that we've been practicing all week, and it scored just before the half. But after talking to Shedeur at halftime, he told me he wouldn't mess up again, and he ran our offense to perfection in the second half as we went on to blow out Buffalo. And I was already thinking about next week's game against my alma mater, Florida State, in an instant classic. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong as we took on Florida State. This game was important for two big reasons. We wanted to remain undefeated, and at the same time, beating Florida State meant we would put Mike Norvell on the hot seat, and I could have a chance of taking over Florida State in the offseason. And after going down 14-0 early, Shedeur would put things in his own hands and start leading us to some points before the half, bringing it 14-10 just before the break. We would finally take our first lead of the game, and we would start to build some momentum on defense after this great break by Nico Reed for the interception. But on the very next play, Shedeur would throw this despicable interception that would get taken back, and we would lose the lead, but Deion Smith would put the team on his back though, but Trey Benson would put Florida State on his. And after splitting the safeties with this beautiful post to Maurice Bell, and a great catch after run, we would take the lead back again with just over 2 minutes to play. Florida State would run a double move to take the lead again as their defense would hold up. We would have our first loss of the season, and we got a reality check. We needed a bounce back game against Oregon State, but our defense had more holes than a block of Swiss cheese, and after not being able to generate a pass rush the entire drive, he would just be able to sit in the pocket and deliver an easy touchdown strike. Damien Martinez is one of the leading rushers in college football. It's easy to see why, with his athleticism and his ability to read the blocks. And on the very next possession, Shedeur would make this terrible read, and I wanted to bench him, but he's my son, so what was I going to do? After being down 14-0 to Oregon State, it was clear that we didn't have a lot of talent, and I knew I was going to have to hit the transfer portal and go crazy in recruiting. But this game wasn't over yet, and Shedeur would start to make some beautiful passes, and we give him some nice and easy screen plays and give the ball to Deion Smith in open space, and we would cut the lead down to 3. But with the game on the line, Shedeur just couldn't help but throw the ball to the other team. And after 2 straight losses, we were going to have to host number 4 Oregon, our Super Bowl. This is the craziest game you're ever going to watch. Number 4 Oregon and Heisman frontrunner Bo Nix would come to Colorado and jump out to a 14-point lead. And after tying it at 14, Bo Nix would show why he's the Heisman favorite and would take this run 80 yards to go back up 2 scores. We kept fighting and went back down as we were led by Shedeur. But after this 4th down stop and another back-breaking touchdown in the 4th quarter, Oregon would take a 14-point lead with just over 3 minutes left, and this is just where it starts to get good. Shedeur would connect with Montana Lemonius and then run it in himself. We would burn all 3 timeouts on defense and finally stop him on 3rd down and get the ball back with just under a minute. This familiar connection would send the game to overtime, but in OT, Bo Nix would continue to run all over us and take the lead. However, on the very next play, Deion Smith cribbed it 25 yards to send it to a second overtime. Second OT, Shedeur and Montana would connect, and on 4th down, this diving stop would shock the nation in the biggest upset of the year. After beating the number 4 team in the country at home, we were taking all that momentum to Arizona State, and we were ready to unleash a can of whoop ass on the Sun Devils. The defense would play the best it has all season long, and Shedeur would have no trouble finding his receivers in the rain. At this point, we were feeling ourselves, and this catch and run by Montana Lemonius will put us in position to go up by 3 touchdowns and take full control of the game after the big win last week, and the offense, defense, and special teams firing on all cylinders. And with Shedeur making throws like this one, I knew that we had a real chance to run the table and compete for the Pac-12 championship. Terrence Lang would go on to have a monstrous day and finish the day with 4 sacks, as Shedeur and Montana would continue to connect. With the game well in hand, I sat back, kicked my feet up, and watched us obliterate Arizona State in all 3 phases of the game as we 40-burgered them in my first shutout as a Buffalo. We were finally back on track. After beating up on Arizona's in-state rival, Arizona State, last week, we felt we had the blueprint to beating any team in the country. That blueprint included throwing the ball to Montana Lemonius and running the football with Deion Smith, playing solid defense while letting Shedeur improvise and do what he does best. As the offense kept rolling and the defense was putting pressure on Arizona, we would soon jump out to a 21-point lead in the first half, and Arizona had their backs against the walls, which is why they called this fake punt on 4th and 4 and would convert it and finally get on the board. However, in the second half, our season would seem to change forever as Shedeur would scramble to the right and get hit out of bounds and would sprain his MCL. Backup junior quarterback JT Shrout would come in the game, and I would make sure that we would call easy screen passes to get him going. But after this beautiful touchdown pass and going 5 for 8 for 74 yards and a touchdown, I knew we might have something special, and we were ready for UCLA. We had to travel to the Rose Bowl to take on number 17 UCLA with our backup quarterback JT Shrout, and we were taking on one of the most electric quarterbacks in the country, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, better known as DTR. Side note, I actually coached against that guy in real life, and he's actually a nightmare to prepare for. Anyways, after this beautiful catch and run by Deion Smith, JT Shrout would connect with RJ Sneed, and we would take an 8-point lead, but UCLA would throw a touchdown strike of their own to keep themselves in it. I would start to dial up the perfect passes, and when JT Shrout would find Montana Lemonius, he would prove that it didn't matter who was throwing him the football. He was going to get open, and he was going to make something happen with the ball in his hands as he dove across the goal line to extend our lead. After this 50-yard touchdown strike by JT Shrout to Montana Lemonius, the game would be well at hand, and JT Shrout would finish the game with just under 400 yards, the most passing yards by a Colorado QB all season. We were playing in a blizzard at Washington with our backup quarterback since Shedeur was still out with a sprained MCL, but JT Shrout showed last game, throwing for almost 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, that he was no slouch. And this game was surprisingly starting to look like it would be decided in the air as both teams were completing pass after pass in the inclement weather. And with just over 2 minutes to go in the half, JT Shrout would find his receiver Tyson down the sideline to set up this running touchdown by Deion Smith. I was really starting to be impressed by the way Shrout was throwing the football, since we haven't had this type of precision all season, even with Shedeur at quarterback. Washington would look to keep this one close, but with my play calling, JT Shrout's arm, and the other receivers finally stepping up and taking a load off of Montana Lemonius, I knew that we were going to win this game. I finally had full confidence in our backup quarterback, as he would throw for 400 yards again and 3 touchdowns to be the player of the game in back-to-back weeks. We forced a safety to start this game against Cal, and it looked like early on our defense was going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting, since the physical limitations of JT Shrout were really starting to show in this game against Cal. And with our offense going scoreless in the first, Terrence Lang was starting to take over the game, and our defense would make up for it. With this pick 6 and extend our lead, Deion Smith, our outstanding running back, was looking like the only bright spot of the offense, as JT Shrout was continuing to struggle and missing wide open receivers on passes that I know high school quarterbacks can make. I think he got the memo, as he would hit senior tight end Brady Russell, who had a nice run after catch that would set us up for a rushing touchdown by Deion Smith. But there was zero chance in hell that I was going to let JT Shrout continued to throw the ball when he couldn't do anything with it, so we kept it on the ground, and we would go on to blow out Cal, and Deion Smith would have one of the craziest jukes I've ever seen in my life, and we were ready to play spoiler. Number 7 USC started this game with a fake punt that led to a field goal, and JT Shrout's terrible decision making would get Montana Lemonious knocked out for the rest of the game, and Caleb Williams would take advantage of our slow DBs and throw a strike. After throwing this interception to try and get some points before the half, Caleb Williams would do something that Mac Jones couldn't: throw the ball 50 yards and give them a chance to score. This was a game against two teams that were both in the top 5 in the country in points per game, but after 3 quarters, there was just 20 total points between the two, and after this missed field goal by USC, we would take advantage with a long touchdown strike and extend the lead to 2 touchdowns with just over 3 minutes. But you can never count out Caleb Williams, and after this fumble by Deion Smith, I thought for sure we were headed for overtime. Travis Dye, the Oregon transfer, would take the ball 25 yards to the house, and it's all tied up at 24. But this quick slant and run would put us in position to kick the game-winning field goal as time expired, and we took the lead in the Pac-12 South. We were playing Utah for a chance to go play Oregon in the Pac-12 championship, and Shedeur Sanders was finally healthy from his MCL sprain, and JT Shrout was struggling the last few games, so there was really no QB controversy. Cam Rising and the offense were extremely difficult to stop, and for like the 100th time this year, a team runs a fake punt against us and converts it. This Utah team was unlike anything we've seen all season, and their defense was relentless. And it could have been a combination of Shedeur being rusty or bad play calling on my end, but we were struggling to do anything on offense. And this pick 6 would extend their lead to 24. This jump ball to Tyson would be too little too late, as we would lose to Utah and have 0 chance of playing in the Pac-12 championship. After the game, we found out Terrence Lang won the Nagurski and Lombardi, and Deion Smith won the Doak Walker, as Bo Nix would end up with the Heisman. Georgia beat Alabama in the SEC championship in a close one, so they both got in, and we had Clemson in a bowl game. I was definitely disappointed that we didn't have a chance to play Oregon again in a rematch for the Pac-12 championship and a chance to go to the Rose Bowl, but I was glad we got to test ourselves against a very tough and talented Clemson offense. This one would be a back and forth battle. We would trade touchdown for touchdown, but our receivers would have some of the best runs after catches that I've seen all season. Ariasa Sr. was making sure he was going to make the most out of his last game as a Buffalo. After it all got tied up at 31, Tyson, who was known for making big plays all season, would take this catch and set us up for another go-ahead touchdown to Brady Russell, the senior tight end. But DJ Uiagalelei would prove why he was the number 1 quarterback coming out of high school, and they would tie it once again, but this play would set them up for the game-winning field goal, and it was fitting that JT Shrout picked up Shedeur at the end of the game. The two quarterbacks combined for a solid season. Deion Smith and Terrence Lang were both All-Americans. Lemonious would declare for the draft, and Alabama got their revenge against Georgia in the championship.